Most people will tell you that Americans somehow are poor in business and poor in ideation. However, if you look at on the ground ideation, the script totally flips. And if you watch until the end, I will tell you exactly how Americans are making global waves in the new global economy. Hello and welcome back to the Traveling Report. Today we're going over why Americans, and particularly Americans outside of the United States, are increasingly becoming more and more readily able to navigate these constituencies, these municipalities, and federal systems that are far different from their own. And of course, I'm here in beautiful Borjomi, Georgia, where I am doing some work in finding investments. And of course, if you're looking to learn about Borjomi and what the potentials are, you of course can look in the description down below and learn more about how the system works, how I view this city, and what I think the opportunities are. And of course, if you would like a jurisdiction spreadsheet on exactly what I'm going over here, feel free to look at the description and sign the Google Forms link, and I'll give you a quote for exactly what you need. Of course, when I say that Americans specifically are able to navigate bureaucracy, I truly mean that. And it comes down to how we are raised. And as an American myself, who was born and raised in what was relatively an insular society, I was born in Missouri, where, of course, people are not, outsiders. And often, when I was growing up, the fact that we didn't have outsiders made us curious of outsiders. And unlike places like Georgia, where there is insularity, but also suspicion, what's different between the United States and a place like Georgia is that acceptance of difference. When I was growing up, I very much was in a city where I did not agree with the local ideation, right? I mean, I moved out of the United States. Of course I didn't. But I wasn't shamed for that. I wasn't made to feel bad for wanting something different. In fact, I was called smart. I was called, educated. And I was called brave. Whereas the inverse, shame, is what is seen in many countries. And this is something that not many people understand, not many people realize. When you have a culture of shame, you often get people who are copy-paste. They don't do things differently because they're afraid of doing things differently. Of course, I lived in Georgia 2 years. It's a wonderful country, and people are very, very smart here. And I would say this is one of the places where you can find extremely high IQ people. You can find amazing workers, but that's all they'll be, right? They won't want to take the risk of creating a business. They won't want to take the risk of a lacking stability. And this is something that's, of course, if you look at the totality of this country, if you look at how it operates, and then compare that to America, it's a walk in the park to deal with something where you're not afraid because you were born into a society that encouraged learning different things, that encouraged being unique, that encouraged having disagreements, right? One thing that I found particularly unique in growing up in the US that I haven't yet seen, even in Western Europe, is open debate. And debate so fierce that people will borderline start fighting over it. This doesn't happen in a lot of societies, and while there may be fights over disagreements in certain countries, I mean, certainly in Georgia, if you look at the parliament, plenty of fights there, but it's not because of the intensity of the debate. It's because you cannot disagree with the national consensus. And I think this is the big disconnect between the mentality I was born into as an American and most countries. Because there are a few countries that I find unique, that I find interesting, that I find very similar to the United States. In fact, I find Georgia to be fairly similar to the United States. However, one thing that has always been easier for Americans is adapting to different ideologies, to different ways of living, because you also have to realize America isn't a monolith in and of itself. People do not think largely the same within the United States, and there's active debates on just about everything. And so what you get in the US, what you get in these countries, these cities, that is different is largely that they're insular, and that different cultural mechanisms are not accepted very widely. And of course, if you're looking at Canada, it's a bit different because Canadians, again, are a bit more conservative with their money. You look at places where immigration tends to be the norm, Latin America, for instance. A lot of people within Latin America, it turns into corruption. So what the US has uniquely figured out is there's less friction if you just allow people to segment themselves off. And this is what has happened in the United States, is a segmentation of the population, but we still go across those quote-unquote borders, ethnic lines, just going out of our neighborhoods. And so the United States has a unique resilience in this regard. And so if you are looking to move outside of the United States as an American, and you are looking to have this lifestyle that I'm living, feel free to fill out the Google Forms link down in the description down below. If you like the video, feel free to like it. If you really like the video, feel free to share it with your friends. If you are at all interested in joining me on this journey of internationalization and globalization, feel free to subscribe. This has been the Traveling Report, signing off.